Good morning, students. Today I am going to discuss Unit 5. Unit 5 is a functions and go to syllabus. Syllabus in functions I am covering these topics: designing structured programs, functions in C, user-defined functions, inter-function communication, standard functions, passing array to functions, passing pointers to a functions, recursions. These topics covered in this unit. And structure programming. Structured programming is a programming technique in which large program is divided into smaller subprograms to make it easy to understand and easy to implement, and makes the code reusability. It means that when you are using structured programmings, when the large programs can be converted into small programs, small subprograms. When you're dividing the subprograms, and any user can understand easily, and implementation also very easy, and makes code is reusable. It means that once I write a code, it use multiple times in using. And structured programming enables code reusability. Code reusability is a method of writing code once and using it many times. Code reusability means when the code is write once, it uses many times. Using a structured programming technique, we write the code once and use it many times. When I am using structured programming, code is write once and that code uses many times. It means that the implementation, the logic of the programming used in the different types of programmings. Structured programming also makes the program easy. Structured programming also makes the program easy to understand, improves the quality of the program, easy to implement, and reduce the time. When you are using structured programming in implementation of programming, the structured program uses to the, when you are using structured programming, to easy to understand, easy to implementation, easy to improve the quality, easy to reduce the time. In C, the structure programming can be designed using functions concept. In C, the structure programming can be designed using functions concept. The using functions concept, we can be divide the large program into smaller subprograms. When you are using functions concept, the large programs can be divided into also smaller subprograms, and these subprograms are implemented to individually. These subprograms implemented to the individually. Every subprogram or function in C is executed individually. It means that when you implement the large program, the large program can be divided into multiple subprograms. Each multiple subprogram can be implemented a different users. After implementing the all subprograms can be combined into one program, that is large programs. Functions. A function is a self-contained block of statements that is used to achieve a particular task. When I use a function, it is a self-contained block, and it is the particular function used to particular task only. The main purpose of using functions is to reduce the redundancy of the code in a program. Redundancy of the programs, it time reduce the time, and code multiple times can be used in code different programs. And a Function is a group of statements. Function is a group of statements that together perform a task. Every C program has at least one function which is main. In program you have to write a main function. Main function means the program start with main and compiler can start with main. That's why using the main function. In C, the idea of top-down design is done using functions. C program is made up of one or more functions. C program can be made up of one or more functions, one and only one of which must be named main function. Most of the people have to know the main function only. The execution of the program always start and end with the main function, but it can call other functions to do special tasks. The main function work is the starting and ending of the program. And also simultaneously sometimes main function can work call the other functions to do special task. In a function C, including main also, is an independent module that will be called to a special task. The function in C is a independent module, and a called function receives control from a calling function. Control from a calling function. When the called function is completes its task and it returns control the calling function. When the function is called at a time and it returns and calling the functions, it may or may not be return a value to the caller. The function of main is called by the operating system. When the function is calling or may not be calling the function, it be depending on the operating system at the running of the program. In the general purpose of the function is to receive zero or more pieces of the data, operate on them. When you are using the main function or some functions in your programming, suppose the best example of the function is we have to write int main, void main. When you are using the int main, return type will be 0. Return type will be 0. When they are using void, no return type in the using the programming. That is the main of the function. And uses of the C function. C functions are used to avoid rewriting same logic or code again and again in the programming. And we can call functions any number of times in a programming and from any place in a programming. When you are calling one function in a programming, that function many times you have to use in a programming at any place. A large C program can easily be tracked when it is divided into functions. It means that when you are using large program, that large program can be divided into sub programs. Then each and every sub program can be tracked when it is divided into as functions, and each function can be tracked. That sub program can be running or not, which is reducing the time. That are the using the easily be tracked. The core concept of C functions are reusability, dividing a big task into small pieces to achieve the functionality, and to improve understandability of very large C programs. The uses of C functions can be observed that the C functions are avoiding reiterating of the logic code, and call when the function is called any place in a programming, any type of programming you have used functions. Large C program can be easily tracked and divided into sub programs. And there are two types of functions in C language. One is library functions and another one is user defined functions. There are two types of functions. One is library functions and another one is user defined functions. Library functions are the functions which are predefined by the developers of C language. Library functions are predefined functions. It means already defining. The declaration and definitions of all library functions are stored in special file called as header files. And a predefined set of functions, their task is limited. When you are using predefined functions in a programming, their task is limited. Library functions are not required to be written by user. Library functions not written by a users or programmers. They are declared already. And suppose you have to take one header file or one library function, the related functions are already inbuilt in a particular software, and the user cannot understand the internal working of these functions. When the user observing these header files, the header files cannot understand the how they internally worked in software, and the user can only use these functions but cannot be changed or modified in them. When you are using in the library functions, ORR header files cannot be changed. The examples of the library functions are printf, scanf are the library functions. When the printf, scanfs are using the standard input output header files, and also clear the screen and get ch. These two library functions are using the console input output of the header files. These are all the library functions. User-defined functions. User-defined functions. User-defined functions are created by the programmers. To write any user-defined functions in a C program, the following three things must be present in the program. They are function declaration, function definition, function calling. The user-defined functions created by the programmer and created by the programmers, and they are using the three things in the user-defined functions. One is function declaration, function definition, and function calling. Function declaration. The general syntax of declaring a function is given below. Return type, function name, and data types of a parameters end with the semicolon. Here return type can be any valid data type in a C language. Return type means we are to write primitive data types. Primitive data types are int, float, char, double. These are all the primitive data types. These primitive data types can be defined as return type. Return type means the valid data types. Example, long int is a return type. Factorial is a function name. Int is a data type of parameters. And with the semicolon, here the data types of the parameters can be defined as within the open brackets and with the semicolon. And function definition. Function definition contains two types, function header and function body. The function header contains return type, function name, data types of the parameters, name of the parameters. And function headers contains return type, function name, data types of the parameters, names of the parameter. Return type. The return type specify the type of the data that the function returns. Function may be written any type of data expected an array. When you are using return type, that return type specify the type of data. It means that which data can be used in the functions, and returns a function may return any type of data except an array. It means that it be return type can be used particular type of data. It be return the program. Function name. The function name is an identifier may which the identifier function will be known, and same naming rule as applied to variable names. Function name is an identifier by which this function will be known, and same naming rules as applied to a variable names. And data type of the parameters. The parameter list is a list of variable names and their associated types. When you are using parameters, that parameters list of variables name, their associated of the types. The parameters receives the value of the arguments when the function is called. And the name of the parameters. A function can be without parameters. In such a case, the parameters list is empty. It means that when the name is not defining in the parameters, that parameters list is empty. An empty parameter list can be explicitly specified, such as placing keyword void inside the parentheses. Then the function body contains the actual code that solves a particular problem. The general syntax of the function definition as follows. And return type means a data type means using primitive data types. Primitive data types means function name, data type, parameter name. Here the return type is data type. Here using int, float, char, double. Function name is here using factorial, and data type is int. And these are the body of the function. Here we have to write function header. Example, long into is a return type, factorial, data type parameter, int, and name n variable. Here I am taking the data type int, variable name is I, and with the semicolon I am declaring the return type is a long into fact equal to 1, factorial initially defining as 1. For I equal to 1, I less than or equal to n, semicolon, I plus plus. When you are using for loop, initial value, condition, and increment or decrement. I am using here the increment, I plus plus. Fact equal to fact star high. When initially fact value is I and I value is 1. 1 into fact equal to 1 into 1. 1. Here the fact value is 1. After the increment of the I value is 2. Initially fact value is 1. 1 into 2, 2. After increment I value, when the fact equal to already 2 and into 3, 6. This is the loop containing the when the n value is not equal to I less than or equal to n. Suppose I am taking 5 n value, I less than or equal to 5, and which means that we have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 loops, when the true value is condition true. After the n value not equal to I, that loop is exited. And when you are taking n value is factorial value equal to 5, that value is 120. When it's 6, 720 answer, and return the fact. This is the programming small example of the general syntax of the function and definition. When you are using function name and data type is a parameter. And next one, function calling. The general syntax of calling a function can be any one of the following. It means that I'm writing two syntaxes to the calling the functions. And first one is variable name. We have to declare here any name equal to function name. You have to write any function name and parameters names end with the semicolon. And the second one is function name parameters. Parameters end with the semicolon. The first syntax is used when the function returns a value from its body. The first syntax is used to the function returns a value from the body of the programming. And the second syntax is used to when the function does not return any value from its body. First one is a return the body value, and second one not return any value from its body. Example, fact equal to factorial and parameter name is n, end with the semicolon. Fact is a variable name equal to factorial is a function name and parameter name is n, end with the semicolon. And function calling function which calls another function is called calling function. It means that one function calling to the another function is called calling function. And function which is invoked by some other function is called as called function, which means that the function which is called by some other function, it's called function. Now go to example. Function 1 and braces open, curly bracket open, write some statements. After that, function 2 a comma b end with a semicolon, and after writing called by another function which is called by some other function. It means that f2 int x comma int y. Here f1 is calling function and f2 is called function. Here the f1 is calling function. It means that a function which calls another function is called a calling function. That is, f1 is the calling function and f2 is called function. It means that a function which is invoked called by some other function is called function. It means that function called means already completed some other function is known as called function. Here the f1 is calling function, f2 is called function. And third one, the parameters which are used in function calling are called as actual parameters or arguments. The parameters which are used in a function calling are called as actual parameters or arguments. The parameters which are used in function definition are called as formal parameters or parameters. The parameters which are used in function calling actual parameters. The parameters which are used in function definition are called as formal parameters. Function declaration is also called as function prototyping. Function declaration also called as function prototyping. If the function definition is written before main function, the function declaration is not necessary. It means that when they write header files, example ash include studio.h, ash include conio.h, after that we are declaring the functions. That is not necessary in these functions. The function definition should not be written inside another function. The function definition should not be written inside another function. The function calling should be always written inside the body of the another function. The function calling should be always written inside the body of the another function. If a function declaration is placed inside the main function, then the corresponding functions is visible to main function only. When you are declaring the variables or functions within the main function, that are visible to the main function. We are not declaring the inside of the main function, that functions corresponding to not visible to the main function. If the function declaration is written before the main function, then the corresponding function is visible to all functions within the same programming. When the function declaring written before main function, then the corresponding functions is visible to the all functions within the same program. And this is one of the example. When we have to observe three statements. One is third one, fourth one, fifth one. The function calling should be always written inside the body of another function. That is the first one. And second one, if the function declaration is placed inside the main function, then the corresponding functions visible to the main function only. And another one is before the main function, then the corresponding function is visible to the all functions within the same program. In the statements defining when the functions declare inside function, that particular functions only visible. When the function written before main function, all functions are visible in the same programming. This is the one of the programming. And include stdio.h standard input output header file. When you are using these header files, how to use printf, scanf functions. Here it is a return type float, and square is the function name, and data type float, parameter x, and with the semicolon, and int data type main function. Before the main function declaration, it means that the functions visible all the functions in a same programming. It satisfies the last point of the before the slide. And the float main, float m comma n, these are the two variables after declaring the main function. When you are using the integer main, means it should be return value using return type. And printf, enter some number for finding square, and end with the semicolon. And slash n means new line or next line. Scanf, percentage of, format specifier f means when you are declaring the float, we are using the f, and ampersand is the address of the variable, and m end with the semicolon. Here n equal to square of m, f end with the semicolon. And printf and square of the given number, percentage f is percentage f, comma m comma n. I am declaring the two variables in a displaying of the output. I am declaring the two types of format specifier f and format specifier f. The first format specifier including to the m, and second format specifier f can be included to the n. And after the main function declaring of the prototype, it means that return type float, square function, float data type x parameters, and not end with the semicolon, not end with the semicolon. And float p, float declaration p is a variable, p equal to x star x, end with the semicolon, return P. It is the function of the main function. And here I am using the two functions. One is within the before main function, after the main function. This is the one of the example of the functions. And second programming, same. I'm using hash include stdio.h standard input output header file. Int data type addition is a function. I'm declaring data type two parameters using the data type. Int means integer number 1 comma integer number 2. We have to define number of variables in a functions. And int equal to sum. I want sum equal to number 1 plus number 2 and with the semicolon. Return sum. After that, void main and int variable 1 variable 2 res. It means I am declaring the two variables, variable 1 and variable 2. Printf, enter the number 1 and with the semicolon scan of percentage of the format specified. I am using here integer, that's why I am here defining the percentage of the ampersand variable 1 and with the semicolon. Printf, enter number 2 and with the semicolon scan of percentage of the format specifier. It means that scanf is a input function, printf is the output function, variable ampersand address of the memory variable 2 and with the semicolon. When you observe that printf, scanf declaring the variables, all are end with the semicolon. In C, every line end with the semicolon. If you not end with the line semicolon, will be defining as a error. And rest equal to addition of variable 1 comma variable 2 and end with the semicolon. Printf output percentage of d comma res result. Res means result. Here observing that I am defining here one of the function. Here I am defining one of the function. This function defining variables. This function defining the variables. This function defining the numbers. This is the examples of the functions. When you are observing these three statements, the function calling should be always written inside the body of the another function. If the function declaration is placed inside the main function, that is the corresponding function is visible to main function only. If the function declaration is written before the main function, then the corresponding function is visible to all the functions within the same programming. We are observing this program defining the within the after the main function. Before main function defining, that function defining here only, displaying visible to the that particular function only. This program. And this program defining before the main function, that function corresponding to display the all the remaining visible to the functions. These are all examples of the three statements. Function calling should be always written inside the body, inside the main function.